Hello, everyone out there. Once again, I'm reporting from the International Film Festival of Rotterdam, and I'm with the director and artist, Basir Mahmood. I hope I got that right. He's going to
Yes.
talk about this short film called Sunsets Every Day. But what's really disturbing about this film is very topical right now because so many of us are experiencing the lockdown, and domestic violence is really, I guess, raging out of control. So I'm going to talk to him about this film. Okay, first thing, let's see it. Okay, why did you choose such an unpleasant subject as a short film?
I was actually offered to make a film on this subject. It's a commission from In Between Art Films, a foundation based in Rome. And the producer, Leonardo Bigazzi, he offered me to become part of the program. And so that's how I really took up a challenge because, as you said, it is not a very pleasant film to make. And I also had a very difficult time while working on the film, while researching, especially because when I started researching, and I did my research over the period of time when we were in the lockdown, and the idea of the film was very much about the lockdown which we all were experiencing, as you said. So being in the similar condition and trying to find out what was happening, maybe in my neighborhood, in some other countries, in my relatives, or how do I get to understand what was happening at that moment, like right away, because a lot of the domestic violence do not get reported, do not come out. So I had to look for certain imagery, certain stories, certain narratives, get some sort of a sense that what was going on. And that's how I reached this some images, some photographs this woman, which were some women shared on social media to encourage other women to speak out. So that was the starting point. As you said, it was, I mean, every day when I would get to my studio in the morning, and I would have to prepare myself mentally what I am going to be looking at. And it was a very unpleasant work to make, but I think it was a very important work to make as well. And being, I don't know, I personally, there was not other artists, I think never probably might have not felt, but I personally felt very uncomfort to read this idea of domestic violence against women as a man. That was very very more challenging for me, because all these films that I do, half of the subject that I'm looking at is important, but also my position, that how am I positioning myself and looking into something that is of opposite gender. So I had to really tell myself that how could I reach out to something that is in a more honest way, other than not impacting me just on the surface, but trying to go much more deeper into it and get into it as I'm trying to understand something. So this is how I end up forming this method of indirect filming, which you eventually saw on the screen. So the film is not shot by me. I was not present on the set. I only commissioned the film to somebody else to make it. So it's only my idea to make this. So I got a commission and I commissioned somebody else to shoot these footages, and then I edited those footages myself, but I was never there on the film set.
Oh, okay. Well, let me ask you something. There's a lot of simplicity in this, not explicit. It's more implied. The violence is more implied. Okay, so why was that? Why did you take that direction?
So when I started making my research, so domestic violence was always, when you write on internet, it's always about the wounds. It's about images which can be right on your face. But I believe there is another kind of a violence that take place, which is only by maybe in your head or in the space of home,
Mhm.
of pressure and continuous stress. So I wanted to. My idea was that I wanted to approach something, but not to make it a spectacle, not to make it something that would only take your attention, but for being violent. But I wanted to remove the main idea of the violence from the film, and I wanted you or me as an audience to fill up those gaps, because we are all familiar with domestic violence. It happens around us. We grow up with certain stories in our family or outside, or in our neighbors or somewhere. So it was already, for me, there was nothing more I could do to this idea to put into an image, but I wanted to create a condition around it. So the film was shot, if I can speak about the process, when I saw these images of domestic violence shared by these women, I took those images and sent them to a production company in Lahore to shoot this film in my absence. So when the main crew is filming the domestic violence, and we shot it for 16 hours, I sent two additional cameramen. So there were two cameramen which were not part of the crew. They were recording for continuous 16-hour, the group of men recording a domestic violence. So, and the idea of men was not an intention, but I knew that the society like Pakistan, where I come from, it's a very male dominating society. So all the films I shoot is most of the time the male are the labor, or cameraman, or the people who are doing things for you. So I knew that this condition would help me to make men and objects that you see in the film, or the interior, as you as witnesses. So they are the one who are witnessing the violence, but you don't really see the violence itself on the screen.
Okay. Well, I noticed there are a lot of household products, especially ceramics in the video. So, I mean, what was, can you explain that, for example? That's part of the implicit
So
act?
there was the two cameramans which I sent. I asked, the one condition I gave them to record continuously on their own, so they would just roam around into the space and record and go into greater details of things. So
Mhm.
when they started to go into details, this is what they did on their own. They started making objects, they started putting them on, and started recording. So it was interesting for me, that because I was looking for things or objects or places, because see, domestic violence is a kind of a violence that happens behind closed doors and closed windows. When it becomes open, the person who is the perpetrator, who's doing the violence, becomes the weaker one, because the society comes up.
Mhm.
So I wanted to get behind closed doors and closed windows and see who are the things, who are the objects, who is actually witnessing the violence the first hand. And this is, I mean, when you go into the domestic, maybe, I mean, I went to my cousin or friend, I meet them and I go into their home where these things might have happened just before I entered the house.
Yeah.
So when I enter there, everything seems to be fine, and it's mostly happening in ideal houses, in good interiors and everything. But what happens there, you don't know. But there are these objects who might be there to witness. So I wanted the camera to or the viewer to see that violence through those objects, or through those people who are working. Their job is to make film, or their job is to clean floor or things like that, which was happening on their own. So I wanted to put kind of a system that is kind of give you an idea of that systematic violence that happens within families or within relationships.
Wow, it's very intense. All right, let me ask you something. I don't want to spoil it. The ending of the film, is it more about reality or hope? Or, I mean, I couldn't tell. I was a bit confused about, is there hope here, or is there like a nasty hard reality?
Um, to be honest, I don't see any hope. Maybe it's my very negative mindset at the moment, because these are the things that are happening so much and happening all around us, and especially during the time when I was making it, we just entered into the lockdown. I was very much disturbed. I think this is the one film that really disturbed me personally a lot,
Mm-hmm.
on a greater level. And there was a point when I was completely confused. Like when I finished the film, I felt like, at one point I felt this is the best film I've ever made. But the next second I started to feel so weak that that this is. So I had to go, and I asked my wife to look at the film and tell me what she thinks about it. And really, it was her that who gave me the confidence on the film. And she said it touched her in a certain way, and she saw it in gender roles. She first asked me, what are these men doing to women? So she started, and when the reaction I got from my home and from my partner, that gave me the confidence to share it outside.
No.
So I was, I don't know, I would not say that I was hopeful, but I wanted to kind of put things. I mean, it's not my job as an artist to say if it's there or it's not there. My role as an artist is to put things as they are, how I see them, or how, it's not my role to say everything is okay, or it's not my role to say everything is really going bad. It's my role is to say that things are happening and this is how they are happening, and this could be another way to look at it. I mean, for me as an artist or as a creative person, was the idea was to give another perspective, another point of view to look at a domestic violence that might give another kind of an understanding to us.
Well, when I was doing my research for the question, I came across this. Like I said, before we had this conference, um, it's, the headlines for domestic violence is global. It's everywhere. It's absolutely amazing. But the UN called it, and I'm quoting the UN. The UN called domestic violence a shadow pandemic.
Yeah, yeah,
Would you agree with that?
yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, I mean, imagine, one thing I do, because I have a background in theater performances, and I was acting, or I was writing, I was directing. Let's say the interest I develop is to get into somebody else's mind and think how that person would behave. And imagine for a woman to be in an abusive relationship, being locked down at home,
Mm,
where you cannot go out. And because when you go out, you have some distance, some space for yourself, and also have friends, some other relatives where you can speak and talk about. But here you're fighting from one virus, and you're going back to the other one. It's like that. So you here you can't protect yourself from a mask or something. So how do you protect yourself into a context like this? And my starting point of the research of the film, what the hope lies when women started to speak. And
mm,
I think this is what is important. I felt in every violence, it's not just this one, it's just that this person, when they are doing the violence, they are the one who carry the power. But as that becomes noticed by everybody or other people, they become the weakest one.
mm.
And this is what the role of the society is, and this is where probably the hope is also, that it is important that we need to connect more. And I'm glad that we are in the age, at least with this pandemic, where these computers, where this connection, where this internet, where there are means of communication that still exist, and which can somehow provide some sort of escape. And I am very much familiar, and we often speak about it with my wife also, that in women in Pakistan are absent from public spaces, but they are super active on social media.
Oh,
So
good.
they have found social media as their space to sort of get out, to show themselves, to present their bodies, or their self, or their confidence, or whatever. So that sometimes surprises me, that how women in a society like Pakistan have found a mean or escape through social media or internet.
Okay.
And with the Western societies, and to be honest, every I don't know, I don't find much difference when it comes to something like domestic violence. It's all countries, as you said, all over the world, we got impacted by coronavirus and something like domestic violence all over the world. So you can't say this country has more or this country has less. It's just that this is happening, and how much are we able to uh, take it or understand it. And this was the idea, that when I shot the film, I didn't want a film to shot in a particular context. So there's a very interesting thing. When we were designing the set for the film, I wanted the set to look like an advertising set,
Yeah.
like an IKEA setting, a place which could be anywhere in the world. So you are not saying that this domestic violence belongs to certain context, but this domestic violence could be anywhere in the world. And this was my intention. This is how I approached the violence, this kind of a domestic violence, as a filmmaker.
Wow, that was a very heavy subject. But thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's very topical right now with all of us still in lockdown. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't even know what to tell someone who's suffering from domestic violence. So I hope, hopefully, seeing your short film and seeing this Q&A, maybe will help at some point.
But there's one thing I would say. When I got commissioned and I was making a research, I got really angry with time looking at these footages and everything.
Mhm.
So I told the foundation who was commissioning it that I want to make the film now. I don't want to get used to of these images.
Right.
I don't want to get used to of these stories. So what my worry is that if we stay into the lockdown, I don't want us to get used to of it.
Right.
I think we need to speak out, and we need to know that this is not acceptable in any condition.
I
So
agree.
before we all get used to of it.
I agree completely. Thank you so much, Basir.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
That's a
Bye
pleasure. Thank
bye.
you.